Hello, this is Voice Your Mind podcast from Listening. Welcome to our show where we talk about the unheard who have no one to share about their insecurities and past trauma, or even having difficulty opening up to people when feeling down. On this show, we will be discussing everything about mental health, depression, and suicide. We listening are just ordinary people who are or were in your similar state and are currently encouraging ourselves and learning to improve our state of mind. So here we are taking a step towards motivating you to get better with us every day of the week. So without any further delay, let's get started with the episode.
Welcome to the show. And our today's guest is Mike Vatter, and he is an OCD patient, and he suffered from OCD and ROCD and several subtypes. And he has a general anxiety disorder, and he's also a podcast host. And I have a number of hats on him, and I'm actually very excited to have this conversation today because I am unaware of various topics that we're going to cover today. Although we will cover a lot of topics, but the core of it will be OCD and anxiety. So let's get started. And how are you feeling today?
I'm feeling great. Thank you so much for having me, Mahmoud. And yeah, I do run the gamut with my OCD and anxiety. So I'm anxious but excited to be here. I appreciate you having me.
Okay, yeah. Thanks for that. And we actually had a lot of technical difficulties just before we started, like a lot of technical difficulties. So we just went through it, and luckily we have fixed it, and we are able to record today. Okay. So my first question, like although like I asked already, but the first question is like, what is actually OCD, and how does it actually affects people?
So, well, there's a lot of different types of OCD, but obsessive compulsive disorder is actually it's one of the most diagnosed and actually misdiagnosed mental health disorders in the world. It's the second. It's the second most diagnosed, or I shouldn't say it's the second most diagnosed. It's the second. It's the second most common mental health disorder among adults in the world. So 1 in 10 adults actually suffers from some form of OCD, which means that millions of people on the planet suffer from OCD, and it may not have been diagnosed, may not know that they have OCD. And one of the problems with that is the stigma that surrounds it. So a lot of adult men, because there's this stigma with with the patriarchy and the feeling that men can't emote, men can't show their emotions, that a lot of men don't get diagnosed with OCD because we're told we can't be emotional, we can't get help, we can't, we have to be the breadwinners in most societies. We have to be the ones who support the family and support the society that we grow up in, that we don't seek out mental health. So mental health resources, I should say. So we don't get diagnosed. And the other side of that coin is the women who are the mothers and the sisters and the providers. They put themselves on the back burner, so to speak. They put themselves last when it comes to getting health care and support for their families, because they're the moms. They take care of their husbands and their families first, their children, so they get their resources last. So children get diagnosed with OCD, adolescents get diagnosed with OCD, but adults don't. So there are a lot of misdiagnoses with OCD. And so there are a lot of people who have it that don't know they have it. So obsessive compulsive disorder, to answer your question a little more distinctly, or a little more succinctly, I should say, is the reoccurrence of intrusive thoughts. Everybody has intrusive thoughts. You may go through your day and think, I'll give an example. Let's say that you encounter a neighbor or a coworker who really bothers you, and you think, I really want to hit them in the face. They bothered me. They made me angry. I want to hit them in the face because they bothered me. Well, you think about that for a split second and that thought leaves your mind. You don't think about it again that day. You may not even think about it again for a year. Somebody with obsessive compulsive disorder will think that thought and then they obsess over it. They think, why did I think that? Not only do they think, I thought that thought, then they think, why did I think that thought? Then they think, if I thought that thought, I must be a horrible person. So they think the thought over and over again. They think about hitting their neighbor in the face over and over and over again, which is a horrible thought to begin with. And it may be funny to think about after the fact. You think, oh, it's like a cartoon. I hit my neighbor in the face, like Bugs Bunny.
But it's not funny. It's
Ren and
reality
Stimpy or
is not.
something. Yeah. They think, okay, I hit my neighbor in the face. That was funny. But then they think about it to the point that it becomes graphic and violent, and they're like a Quentin Tarantino movie. They're beating their neighbor to a pulp. And that becomes a horrific image that they've thought about it to the point that it's this gruesome thought. So it becomes a terrible reoccurring thought. Then they think, why did I think this horrible thought? I must be a horrible person. And then they think, well, if I'm a horrible person, I can't be around this neighbor anymore. So they avoid the neighbor. And these three things become a cycle in their mind, over and 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 over on an unending loop. Somebody without OCD dismisses that thought as, oh, well, that was just something I thought of. I didn't mean it. Somebody with OCD thinks, well, if I thought it, I must have meant it. Now, they would never, ever act on it. They're not a psychopath. They're not somebody who would ever act on the thought, which makes them different from somebody who might be schizophrenic or bipolar, or somebody who might be psychopathic, or any of these other mental health disorders that end up in violence or could end up in violence. Somebody with obsessive compulsive disorder would never act on the thought. They just obsess over the thought and think, I must be a horrible person for thinking this thought. And it ruminates over and over and over in their mind until it leads to possibly depression. It definitely leads to avoidance. And they keep the thoughts in their mind because they're afraid they might act on it. So it becomes a rumination and the obsession and compulsion cycle over and over in their minds, to the point that they're now avoiding the neighbor. They might even avoid leaving their house. So that's the type of OCD that I have, which is, sometimes it's called pure O or pure OCD, which means the thoughts stay in your mind. You never act on them. No one with OCD ever acts on their thoughts, but you're afraid you might act on them. When I say act, I mean you'd never actually hit the neighbor. But there is an act associated with OCD, which is the compulsion. So my brain, that part of my brain that's not getting enough serotonin, or the part of my brain that there's a thought in the back of your brain. We all have the little part of our brain, like our conscience, that you think of like Jiminy Cricket, right? Everyone knows that. I think that speaks across all cultures. Everyone thinks of Jiminy Cricket from Disney, from Pinocchio. The little cricket that sits in your shoulder, or the angel and the devil that sit in your shoulder and tell you good and bad things you can do. So Jiminy Cricket tells you, you're a good person. You're not going to act on that. Well, the OCD version of Jiminy Cricket sits on your shoulder and says, well, if you want the thought to stop, you have to do this action. And the action in the irrational part of the OCD brain says, because it makes absolutely no sense, and we know this, the irrational Jiminy Cricket says, if you flick the light switch, this thought will go away. There's no correlation between making the lights go on and off and making the thoughts stop. But for some reason, the OCD brain, and we don't know why, scientists don't know why, they've been studying this for decades, there's no correlation between flicking the light switch or washing your hands or tying your shoes or biting your fingernails or picking your skin or any of the compulsions that people with OCD have. It doesn't make any sense. Cleaning the coffee pot over and over again, or clicking a pen, over and over again. I don't know if you can hear that, but yeah, I'm clicking a ballpoint pen, clicking a pen over and over again. Biting my nails or picking at my nail beds until they bleed. That will make the thought in my OCD brain, that will make the thought go away. So I do these things to make the thought go away. And that is the compulsion that's associated with the obsession. The obsession is, I want to punch my neighbor in the face, but I'm not going to do that. So I do a compulsion to make that thought go away. And that leads to, well, I flicked my light switch 5 times today, and I'm still thinking about punching my neighbor. So tomorrow I have to flick my light switch 10 times. And then eventually I'm flicking my light switch 150 times. And now it's taking up my entire day. Just to leave my bedroom, I have to flick my light switch 230 times just to leave my bedroom. And that didn't work yesterday. So today I'm going to add washing my hands. So now just to leave and this is not me, I'm just giving an example. Now just to leave my bedroom every morning, I've got to wash my hands 15 times, flick my light switch 230 times, click my ballpoint pen every time I pick it up, I've got to click it 5 times. I've got to tie and untie my shoes 15 times. So now I can't even leave my house in a reasonable amount of time because it takes me 5 hours to get ready every morning. Well, that's half my workday gone. So somebody who doesn't have OCD says, I want to punch my neighbor, and the thought is gone just like that. Somebody with OCD can't let go of that thought. So that's a very long answer to your question, what is OCD? And for everybody who has OCD, that answer is different. There's 5 basic types of OCD, but there are hundreds of subtypes of OCD, because every single person you ask, what type of OCD do you have? They're going to have a different answer.
Okay, so that was actually a pretty long answer. However, so it was very very to the point and descriptive. I was shocked with all the examples that you gave, and especially with the one that you said, like the angel, like it's the way the angel on your shoulder speaks to you. Like that's the most interesting part that I heard throughout the conversation. And the second was the punching the neighbors. Like I'm pretty sure you had
because we've all had that thought, right? We've all thought about that. We've all had a coworker or a neighbor or even a family member where we're like, if that person speaks to me today, I want to punch them in the face. We've all had that thought, and we would never do it. Most people would never do it, but especially somebody with OCD, I'm the godfather of probably, I think if you added it up, I think I'm the godfather of 6. Between my husband and I think we're the godfathers of 6 kids. And we are the safest people to leave your kids with, because we would never, ever harm them. Because people know we are prepared. Like I'm like a Boy Scout on steroids. I have a list. I know exactly who to call in an emergency. I am the best person to leave your kid with. If you want someone to pet sit, I'm the best person to leave your dog with, because I have thought of every possible bad thing that could happen. And I've got an emergency plan that has been dealt with. I mean, I thought of every possible scenario of if this dog chokes on a tennis ball to if this kid, trips over a toy and skins his knee. I have 15 to 150 plans on how to deal with this emergency. I'm great in an emergency if it's somebody else's emergency. If it's my emergency, forget it. I'm going to fall apart because I plan everything to the nth degree.
Okay, like there are a few very interesting points that came in, like with that short description that you gave. Plus, I had 2 questions from the previous conversation.
Yeah,
I'm gonna go through one by one. So first one is, so if someone has if someone is an overthinker,
mm-hmm.
and one have an OCD, so what are the differences and how can you identify those? Are like an overthinker and a person with OCD, and what are the types of OCDs?
So if if someone has OCD, they are an overthinker.
Yes,
that's guaranteed. If somebody is an overthinker, it does not mean they have OCD. You can be an overthinker and not have OCD. But if you have OCD, I guarantee you're an overthinker. And also perfectionism. Someone can say, "Oh, I'm a perfectionist." It does not mean they have OCD. But if somebody has OCD, I promise you they're probably a perfectionist. And there's a difference. So I'm going to pull up a file on my phone because when I try to remember all the different types of OCD, I mess them up.
Like,
So I'm pulling
okay,
up.
so like tell me very shortly, like does not need to be like to the pinpoint and perfect, but like 80% is okay for me. And
Yeah.
and in terms of, let's say, the hundreds of that you mentioned, like you can say shortly about that, that will be great enough.
Yeah. So if somebody is an overthinker, they may think about, if you said, I'm going to go camping. I want to go camping this weekend. And you're going to overthink about, well, I need to bring, bug spray and a tent and my food kit. And then you're going to think about what are the things I need to secure my food so wild animals don't get the food. You may overthink and bring more supplies than you need. And so you may need to get through the camping trip. You may need 10 supplies, but you're an overthinker. So you're going to bring 15 supplies. I, as an OCD sufferer with an overthinking subtype, I'm going to bring, as an extreme example, I'm going to pack my entire kitchen. I'm going to bring a Winnebago or a mobile home. I'm going to pack everything in my mobile home and bring it with me because I might need an entire refrigerator. I might need, let's think of something extremely unneeded on a camping trip. I'm going to a camping trip in
A microwave.
Yeah, right. I might need a microwave oven. Even more extreme, I might need an ice pick, even though I'm camping in the middle of summer. Why would I need an ice pick? I don't know. I might need it. I might need snowshoes, even though I'm camping in the Florida Keys. Why would I need snowshoes? It's never once in the history of the world snowed in the Florida Keys, but I might need snowshoes. Why would I need them? I don't know. My OCD brain said I might need them, so I should bring them. That's an overthinker with OCD. Okay, so the main types of OCD are relationship OCD, which I have, and that means every relationship that you have, this is a tough one. Every relationship you have, you form a tight bond in your mind with that person, and you think that everything that they do revolves around you. And there's extremes, obviously. I'm going to give extreme examples. So my husband and I, and this is going on right now. Last night, he was in a bad mood. He didn't know why he was in a bad mood. Sometimes people are just in a bad mood. You had a bad day at work. You had a bad phone call. You turned on a movie you thought you'd enjoy and you didn't enjoy it. So it put you in a bad mood. Now, he's just in a bad mood and he doesn't even know why. But to me, he's in a bad mood. That means he's mad at me. I'm trying to figure out why he's mad at me. What did I do? What did I say? Why is he mad at me? Is he mad at me for something I said in 2004? I'm rethinking every conversation we've had since the day we met 25 years ago. I'm asking him questions about something with the day we met was when we used to work together. I'm like, are you mad at me because of that thing I said in 1997? He's like, no, what are you even talking about? That's what an overthinker with OCD, with our OCD, relationship OCD does. So I'm thinking about things from 25 years ago, and he's like, what are you even talking about? I don't even remember what I had for breakfast, and you're bringing up something from 25 years ago, because that's what relationship OCD is. My mailman, it's actually a woman, my mail delivery person, her name is Shelby. I'm talking to Shelby the other day, and she hands me my mail, and she says, I hope it's all good news and nothing bad. While I'm walking back to my house and going through my mail, and I see a letter from the bank. And I immediately thought, oh no, it's something bad because she told me, I hope it's all good news. It's nothing. My bank got bought out by another bank. It's just a letter telling me that. But I immediately thought, oh no, Shelby told me it might be bad news. So I'm immediately thinking the worst. My house is going to get taken away. I'm going to be homeless, because she said something completely innocuous. But that's relationship OCD. Then there's harm OCD, which is when you're afraid that any action you take might harm somebody. So if I step on a crack, break your mother's back. We've all heard that term. It's an old nursery rhyme. I don't know if that translates to other societies in the world, but There's an old Mother Goose nursery rhyme: step on a crack, break your mother's back; step on a line, break your father's spine. It's a cautionary tale for children that if you should be careful where you're walking. You should watch both ways before crossing the street. So if you step on a crack, you break your mother's back is the rhyme that children remember. So harm OCD, I'm 44 years old. I still have trouble walking on a sidewalk, walking on pavement. If I see a crack in the sidewalk, I step over it because I'm afraid I might actually break my mother's back if I step on that crack. There's no possible way that stepping on a crack in the pavement will cause my mother's back to break. But what if? What if it does? What if it does? What if there's some butterfly effect? What if there's some, ripple in the universe that causes that old nursery rhyme to be true? Then there's homosexual OCD, or also sometimes called sexual orientation OCD, where for some reason, I don't have this one, but for some reason you start questioning your sexual orientation. You saw somebody of the same gender or the opposite sexual orientation that you have. So if you're a straight person, if you're a heterosexual person, and you see somebody of the same gender, and you say, "Oh, I like their outfit," or "I like their hair," or "He has really nice glasses," and you just think, "Oh, that's something I found attractive about that person." Somebody with sexual orientation OCD would say, "Oh, am I attracted to somebody of the same gender?" And they start ruminating about that. They think, maybe I'm gay, maybe I'm homosexual, or they might think, I saw a trans person and they were really pretty or really attractive. Wait a minute, am I transgender now? And they ruminate about that. It doesn't mean that they are, they just think maybe I am. Then there's religious OCD, which is anything that you do may cause your higher power to smite you. So depending on your religion, and the Christian, which is what I'll speak to, in the Christian religion, if I don't click my pen, my ballpoint pen that I clicked earlier, if I don't click that 5 times today, I'm going to go to hell. It doesn't make any sense, and we know the thing about OCD is we know our thoughts don't make sense, but we can't control them. We know that they're irrational. We can't make them make sense. We can't. Somebody without OCD can say that doesn't make any sense, and they dismiss the thought. Somebody with OCD says, I know it doesn't make sense, but I have to do this thing to make the thought stop. So religious OCD, also called scrupulosity, is you have to stick to a very strict set of rules, or you're going to go to hell, or your God will smite you, or Allah or Buddha or Jesus or whoever your higher power is will strike you down, maybe even in the moment. Not when you die and you're judged later, but even in the moment. If you jaywalk, if you park illegally, if you don't get to work 5 minutes early, God will strike you down with a lightning bolt at that exact moment. So this causes some people with scrupulosity OCD to be 3 hours early for everything that they do, because they can't be 2 minutes late. And then there's a really tough one for people to hear is pedophilia OCD, where they can't be around children because they think they might do something sexual to those children. Now, they would never act on these thoughts, but they maybe once had a thought when they were changing a child's diaper, or when they were in a room with a child, that they thought, did that child look at me funny? Or did I think a thought that I shouldn't have thought about that child? That now they avoid all children because they think they might do something sexual to that child. Now, they never, ever would. They would never, ever act on that thought. But what if they did? And so they avoid all children at all costs, because they're afraid that what if I act on that thought? So then each of those main types of OCD have subtypes. You can have more than one. Like I have harm OCD, ROCD, and then I also have general anxiety disorder, where if I'm in a crowd, I might have a panic attack. If I also have asthma, so I have trouble breathing, sometimes in certain conditions. So I might have a panic attack because of my asthma, which then could trigger an OCD episode, or vice versa. You have to tell me to shut up, or I'm going to
Okay.
keep talking.
No, you keep talking. Like it's really interesting for me. Like trust me. Like I was completely unaware anything like OCD existed. Like
Yeah,
almost like before you, like before talking with you through Messenger, I didn't knew that OCD actually existed. And at
yeah.
this
A lot of
point,
people don't.
yeah. And the fact is, a lot, as you said already, like a major portion of the population already have it, and it's hard to very hard to identify them because they don't think they have it, right?
Right.
And
or they
maybe
think or they think it I'm sorry, I don't mean to cut you off, but they think it just means being tidy and organized. There's a lot of people in the media, in society, and the way it's portrayed in movies and television is that if somebody has OCD, it's a visual thing. They just click light switches on and off. They just wash their hands a lot. They like their desk to be really organized, or their house is really clean. And I know people who have OCD whose houses are a complete mess. They're not well organized at all. They're not tidy people. They don't wash their hands 100 times a day. But that's something that's easily visual for a camera, because you can't film what's in somebody's brain. So that's become a stereotype that's perpetuated by Hollywood and the media, because it's something that's an easy visual for an audience to pick up on. And when you have celebrities like Khloe Kardashian, who's world famous, in my opinion, for doing nothing, but she's world famous. And she said she has a television show called Close CD, where she organizes things in her house, showing you how to fold your sweaters. And she had a whole segment on how to organize her Oreos. I don't know how you organize Oreos. They're all exactly the same, but she organized Oreos for 15 minutes in a segment, which that drove me up the wall. I wanted to call her agent and say, why are you even airing this? This is horrible. But Close CD was the thing that she was calling it, meaning Chloe's OCD, which is a horribly offensive thing. But she was organizing things and calling it Chloe's OCD, Close CD for short. And it's horribly offensive because there are people who do suffer every day, who can't hold down a job, who can't get out of their house, who can't pick out something as simple as picking out an outfit to leave the house takes hours and causes such agony. And she's making fun of it in a way. She's got millions and millions of fans, young people who worship her, watching this show, thinking that, she can just turn it on and off, for the camera. But people think that OCD is just organizing things and being tidy, and it's not. It's a debilitating mental health disorder.
I really agree to that. Like I agree to that. Though I haven't watched any episodes or any shows of the Kardashians. I say this, but like the fact is, like portraying, I have seen examples of how Hollywood like shows people with, I'm not sure it was OCD, but if someone has any disorder, they show that this is what they do. They clean stuff and like makes everything structured, or like their perfectionist. They portray that. That's a major flaw, and it's still now they're comparing. Like we have to combat the fact that all Hollywood has already made some stereotypes. Hollywood or the media have already made some major stereotypes related to any disorder, any disorder related to mental health, or what do you call it, like OCDs or any other
Yeah,
health symptoms.
absolutely. Yeah.
Disorders, sorry. Yeah,
Yeah.
and we have to combat that. And so what do you think? So this is an interesting part, and I think like we all have to think about it. So how can we, as a person or as a group of people, let's say, how can we combat that thing? Let's start from the point of like breaking that stereotype. Like what we can do, can we actually do?
Yeah, and so I volunteer with an organization, the International OCD Foundation, is a great resource, and their website is iocdf.org, and it's I said that pretty fast, iocdf.org. It's International OCD Foundation, and they have a wealth of information on their website on treatments and treatment options, on the different types of OCD. I volunteer with their chapter in my area, which is OCD Jacksonville. And I live in Jacksonville, Florida. And so our chapter is OCD Jacksonville, and I've been on their board for a number of years. I host a podcast called OCD SOS, which stands for OCD Sharing Our Stories. There's a wealth of information on a website called themighty.com. And the Mighty has a wealth of information on various mental health disorders, and you can actually search their menu and combine different mental health disorders. So you might have bipolar disorder and OCD. You might have OCD and borderline personality disorder. So you can combine the two subtypes and search, kind of drill down into different columns and say, well, if I have this and this, what are my options? So there's research you can do on your own, but for people who don't have OCD, but they want to learn more about it, iocdf.org is a wonderful, wonderful resource. Listen to my podcast. I have guests and doctors on all the time, people who suffer from OCD, people who can teach about OCD, but talk to people like me who have OCD, who are willing to share their stories, because we want to talk about it. We want to end the stigma. Don't rely on, actors and celebrities to be the only source of your information. And we need to make, especially in the United States, we need to make healthcare universal. We need to make the information accessible. So if it's not covered by the insurance companies, we need to make it covered by the insurance companies. I pay $3,000 a month for my medicine, and I have great insurance. I'm on medication for OCD, and I have a great therapist. I have great insurance. I have great medication. But I pay thousands of dollars a month for my mental health, and I know in other countries it's free. And I know in some countries, in some states, there's no treatment for it. Some states in the United States, there's no treatment for it. But the best thing to do is to find the right therapist, the right therapist and the right medication is the best key. But do your research, learn about OCD, talk to people who have OCD, is the best way to end the stigma, and don't trust the stereotypes.
Okay, so that's exactly what we are doing right now.
Yeah,
right. That we are doing education. Like everything is education, and like most people associate education with schools, only schools. Like that's not the right thing to do. However, this process, like we're going through, like while researching guests, especially in terms of Bangladesh, so we are having both interview series, as in both different podcasts. Like, okay, so one is in English and another is Bangla. So when it comes to finding even guests, so when I ask people who don't have any of these symptoms, they think that people like you who have OCDs and mental health disorders don't want to share anything.
Yeah.
And the fact is, it's quite the opposite, right? Like it's quite the opposite. You want to help people who are already struggling. And I believe it, and most people don't. A majority of population don't.
And it was funny when you reached out to me on Facebook, you put the post on Facebook, that you were looking for guests, and I responded. Somebody said, when I said I have OCD and general anxiety disorder, someone said, "Oh, that's so sad." And I wrote back and said, "No, it's not. It's not sad."
I know.
Yeah. Was it you that said that? Yeah. It's not sad. I mean, it can be sad, but it's not. It's not necessarily sad. It's just that, this is the card I was dealt in life. And do I have sad days? Absolutely. I mean, I didn't sleep at all last night. I got absolutely zero sleep last night. It's 11 a.m. here in Florida, and I got absolutely zero sleep last night. So as soon as we're done with this interview, I'm going to go take a nap. But I got no sleep because I was so anxious about this interview. I knew I would do well. I knew that it was going to be fine. I knew that I was prepared to talk about what I wanted to talk about, but I was so anxious I didn't get any sleep at all. And I tossed and turned all night, and I kept getting up and getting out of bed and pacing around the house, and I was doing my compulsions, and I was nervous, thinking, what if I say the wrong thing? What if I do the wrong thing? But I also knew that I know what I'm talking about. And I know that I'm just going to be having a conversation with somebody, and I'm going to be talking about the same stuff I talk about all the time. And I'm talking about myself, and I can't mess that up. So, it's not like I'm giving medical advice. I'm not a medical practitioner. I'm just talking about myself and my experience. People want to talk about their experiences. People want to end the stigma, and they want to end the stereotypes. So go straight to the source. And if somebody doesn't want to talk to you about it, that's their choice, but you'll find somebody who does. And don't force the issue. There's a wealth of information. You just have to find it.
Okay, this is exactly what I learned like previously this year. Like before that, I also thought that before starting my first podcast, which is actually Paced by Mahmood. So before starting that, so I literally thought exactly that people don't want to share anything and stuff. And as soon as I like started reaching out to people, magic happened. Like
Yeah.
everyone wants to share what they know and want to help people. That even now, let's say, let's stop like every other voices and listen to ourselves. Okay, if I say about myself, I don't want anyone to suffer from the pain or the struggle that I have faced, right?
Right.
And most people are the same.
Absolutely.
Combine these two, and everyone wants to share it.
Yeah, everybody has a story, and the best thing you can do is to get somebody to talk about themselves, because if they're like me, they'll never shut up. but
I loved it. The fact is, I loved it.
Yeah, if they want to tell a story, they're going to tell it. If they don't want to tell a story, they're going to tell you. If they don't want to tell their story, they're going to have a story they want to tell you. They may say, "Hey, I don't want to tell you my story, but I know another story that is related to the topic that I will tell you," because people want to end whatever the stigma is, whatever the stereotype is. They want to end it. So they won't if they're not comfortable telling their own personal story, they'll give you examples and other stories that they will be comfortable sharing. And that's part of the journey of ending the stigma. One quick thing I want to share before I know we're running out of time, but there was a great TV show that a lot of people enjoyed called Monk, and it ran for many, many years, about a detective who had OCD. And that was kind of what they always said about the character. And I will tell you, I watched that show for as long as I could stand it. And the actor who was on that show, he's an amazing actor. And the show was really well written. But I'll tell you, that character, he had a lot of things wrong with him, but he did not have OCD. OCD was not one of his issues. He had a lot of different things. He had germophobia. He had perfectionism. He didn't have OCD. That character was well written for other issues, but OCD was not one of them. And they always portrayed him as saying he had OCD, and he didn't have OCD. And that's one of the pop culture things that, we always talk about especially on my podcast and other things when we talk with the OCD conferences and things like that. He always comes up as people saying, well, oh, you're like Monk. You have OCD, you're like Monk, or you're like Jack Nicholson in As Good as It Gets. These are great characters that are well written, but they're not the typical OCD person. And, somebody who has to wear gloves all the time, or has to, click a light switch all the time, that is a type of OCD, but it's a very small part of the OCD population. Having OCD is almost as common as having red hair. Think of all the people that even if you don't know any personally, but if you see people in the media, if you see people in magazines, on TV who have red hair, that's a lot of people on the planet that have red hair. Strawberry blonde, red streaks, people who have naturally red hair, freckles. That's a lot of people with red hair. That almost that same number of people have OCD in some form or another. So the different types of people that have different types of OCD, there are millions of us. And for us to be lumped into one single character on a TV show or one single character in a movie is doing us a huge disservice. So, like I said before, if you want to know about somebody's mental health, talk to somebody who has that disorder.
Okay. So for OCD, come to Mike Vatter.
Right? Yes. I'm not the expert, but I know about me. I mean, you wouldn't go to one person in Spain to learn about all the customs of Spain. You wouldn't go to one person in India to learn about all the customs of India. You wouldn't go to one person in Florida to learn about, well, in Florida you might, because Florida man is kind of famous. I will admit that's a stereotype that we kind of live up to in Florida. But you wouldn't, I mean, there's 50 states in the United States. You wouldn't expect everybody in the United States to have the same culture because we're like 50 small countries. But my point is, you wouldn't go to one person to get all the information on one thing. You want to learn about OCD, talk to 50 different people with OCD. You're going to get 50 different answers. You shouldn't rely on one stereotype.
Absolutely. So we have one covered. We have 49 to go.
Right? at least
49 to go. Okay, so we are running out of time.
Yes.
Okay, so where can our listeners can find you online?
So the easy way, the free way to find us is on Stitcher and on Audible as well. Those are the two free ways to find our podcast, and it's OCD SOS, which stands for OCD Sharing Our Stories. And again, I have to stress International OCD Foundation, which is iocdf.org. Those are the two resources that I say are the best. Well, the podcast, because it's mine. If you want to hear my voice and hear my stories again, and I'll just ramble on and on. But for medical and scientific information, iocdf.org is the gold standard research for OCD information.
Okay, that's all for today. So again, he was by Mike Vatter from Florida, and saying that I'm ending this show for today. Signing off. This was your host Mahmood. Bye.
And that's the end of today's episode. I know taking action is quite a hard job to do, so I hope the advice and insights we got today will help you to take the leap of faith and pursue your dreams. You can share your story with us through the first link in the description box, and don't forget to subscribe and leave a review on the Apple Podcast. We will come back with another episode. Till then, keep healing, learning, and growing. Thank you.